It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.
Going. All right. So first, let's go around the horn, say hi, introduce ourselves.
Hey, I'm Chad Jetner.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
I'm Kyle Bacher, and that was a horrible intro. Not from you guys. I mean, before we introduced ourselves, it was mediocre at best.
You'll clean it up in post. We know.
Yeah. Speaking of mediocre, we're talking about an article that Chad read and recommended that is called "Breaking the Inertia of Mediocrity," and it's written by a human named David Heinemeier Hansen. If you want to look it up, what I got out of it, I did a little summary. Mediocre decisions, changes, ideas, practices, ways of doing things, accumulate, build inertia, and then it's hard to turn them around. Sort of my summary of kind of what the article's about. Since you brought up the topic, do you want to kind of take us through your thoughts on it first?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's really what the guy's talking about. And if you guys don't know, DHH, he's relatively well known in some of the software communities. He's the guy that invented Ruby on Rails, one of the principal founders of 37 Signals, builder of what's their latest application, hey.com. It's another email thing. We talked about one of his articles a little bit ago when we were talking about moving off of the cloud. They just completed their entire migration off of the cloud. It's not really specifically referenced in this article, but he kind of alludes to the whole thought process behind moving off the cloud in this article, like saying it would be like mediocre decisions. It would be super easy to say, yeah, no, we're just going to continue to build on the cloud. We're going to continue to this. We're going to continue to this, and not like reevaluate. Holy crap, are we build on a bunch of bad ideas or maybe average ideas and not really think revolutionary about what we're doing and how we're doing it? And that's kind of what he's getting at here, is that those decisions, and some of them are just very simple little things, right? They just feed on themselves, and they build and they build and they build, and they lead to incredibly mediocre projects, people, companies. And the only bummer is he doesn't really give you a way out, and it's a pretty short article. But he does point at it and say, this is an absolute thing and it's a problem.
I mean, it's kind of like technical debt in a way, right? Technical debt doesn't just start out as this giant amount of code that's hanging around doing things poorly. It slowly builds into a problem. Like, oh, I don't have time to make this right. I'll just do this one quick fix. And since we made that one quick fix, we don't have time to re-architect the rest of this, so we'll do this other quick fix. And pretty soon you're down the road of, mediocrity, right? You've got a technical debt that needs to be eliminated, and the cost to eliminate it seems great on a, sprint by sprint basis, but the cost of keeping it is so much greater that you don't even realize it until you get far enough down the road to realize that, oh, this is wrong. And I've recognized that this is wrong. And now that I've recognized it, I need to go back and get out of it. And I think that sort of mediocrity mindset or mediocrity of small decisions that get you into that place, none of them independently look bad, right? They look short term. They may look like a little shortcut. But eventually you get to the point where you go, we are not doing this right, or we have made some decisions, and getting off of the cloud or getting onto the cloud. Both of those are things that can be tough decisions and really break the architecture that you may have going, right?
I think it's one of the things mentioned was it's really easy to recognize truly bad stuff, truly bad, horrible ideas. Things
Right.
stand out like, no, I got a 486 DX. We can throw this on in the closet so we don't have to go to the cloud. Like, that's an obviously horrible idea. And,
Right.
But, and I think sometimes you need to recover from forced mediocrity. I read a situation when we locked down of having to take a lot of stuff paperless, and the clock was ticking. new hires were starting, retros had to be done, things like that. So these solutions had to be built. And was there a lot of planning behind it? And, I did the best I could in the time I had. But, like as I look the stuff over, I go back and say, well, this could have been a lot cleaner. Could have actually gone in and labeled this stuff. I could have. So now it's like going back, making that choice to go back and improve something that's working just fine and say, okay, let's act, this is okay. This is totally working for us. We could leave this for another several years and not touch it. But I don't like where it's storing the stuff. I don't like the way it's notifying, or I don't like the way that I necessarily built that. I could have done better. But I
don't know how to say this right, but like there's this idea that poor performers, right, surround themselves with other poor performers so that you don't necessarily see. And I'm not talking about, I guess I kind of am.
These are generalizations, right?
Generalizations, yes. Because if you don't, then you look, and then it's obvious what your capabilities are, right? So you want to surround yourself with people that have similar or worse capabilities than you do. Bad ideas generate more bad ideas, right? Like if you start building a solution on a bad idea and you don't revisit, or even a average, like, a bunt, right? Like some of, like you were getting at, Peter, the cloud stuff, right? Well, shoot, all right, we started with this mediocre thought process that led us down this path, and we didn't really think of going way up or, blowing the whole thing up ever, right? We're just going to continue to build on it and build on it and build on it. And you then end up boxing yourself into what was built foundationally on, everybody's doing it this way, so we're going to. And yes, there are design patterns and solution architecture patterns and possible, like, good, solid foundational ways to do everything. You will often get lost in, well, yes, we're building this thing. Obviously, it's going to go out in the cloud. Obviously, it's going to use this and this and this, right? I think our buddy Singh recently posted an architectural diagram that came out of Stack Overflow, right, on our DevOps channel in Slack. And it basically said, everybody assumes the architecture of Stack Overflow is this, and it's this big spider web with redundancies and edge caching and like all sorts of stuff, right? When in reality, it's literally just this very simple thing. You would think that very simple thing might just be like that. Is that mediocre? No. I mean, I think everybody at the scale of Stack Overflow would probably try to blow it up and over-optimize it immediately.
Maybe it's elegant. Yeah. It's simple and it works. Adding overhead and complexity for this, when you have this desire to improve things, it's like, how do you avoid mediocrity, but also avoid getting stuck with this idea of perfection? Like you were saying the other day about like boring code, Peter.
Boring code is oftentimes a good thing, right? And it doesn't have to be mediocre code. It just has to be boring, that you can look at it and know what it does. You don't have to put warning labels around it. We've talked about that before. Do not touch this code. We don't know why it works, but it works. So hands off. Like, really? That's your business plan, is to keep that, I guess in this case, mediocre code that nobody understands in place because somebody touched it at one point and it broke everything. And so
I think, Chad, when you're talking about the idea of, bad people surrounding, or for lack of a better term, surrounding themselves with the same, I think there's also human nature involved, bad habits, things like that can come into play. You look at something like the sunk cost fallacy, where it's like, we've gone this far, we've invested this much. Like, even though you're destined for failure and you may know it, but you have so much momentum, and it's like, so you just keep going, throwing good money after bad, or putting lipstick on a pig. And maybe that's not even a conscious thing. Maybe it's just pain avoidance. The pain of going back and saying, you know what, this was not a great idea. We kind of missed on this one. Having to, kind of crow or admit failure, you just keep going in the wrong direction.
Well, yeah, there was another part of that article that talked about, what did it talk about? Easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life, which I thought was an interesting way to look at things, right? Like if you make the easy choices, they're not necessarily the best choice. They're just an easy choice to make, right? Nobody has ever been fired for choosing IBM was a thing you heard a lot when I was growing up in IT. It was an easy choice. Again, it was maybe not, and I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but it was an easy choice that people were making without putting a lot of thought into it. And so they may have ended up with mediocre choices. And you add enough of those mediocre choices together, and pretty soon you have a mediocre system or a mediocre environment.
And it doesn't just affect systems, right? It affects culture too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've experienced this firsthand in previous things. It culturally, I went through this previous gig, SDG. It's probably okay to talk about it. We got purchased by a larger company, right? And we had an entire culture. We had these events and these things that we did, right? And slowly they started to disappear, right? In the first one, okay, it's gone now. Great. Nobody really noticed, right? It's almost like a frog boiling in water, right? Oh, yeah, we're not going to do this, the annual holiday party anymore. It's, blah, 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 for whatever reason. Okay, cool. That's fine. And then it was, and this monthly thing you guys do, we'll get rid of that. And we'll get rid of the Friday thing, and then we'll get rid of the happy hour. And until it was just literally just, oh, please come to work from 8 to 4. Leave and say good night at the end, right? Like that's that was but you never saw it happen until you just contrasted what it was 5 years ago to what it was when I left, right? It just inertia that David talks about, that inertia just built up and fed in on itself, and you didn't feel it happening. Right. I mean, it was a bummer. Right. Oh, okay. No holiday, but fine. I guess, I'll miss it, but we still get to hang out on our monthly thing, and we still get to hang out on our weekly thing. And then we still get to, whatever. But you start taking things away and they don't come back. Right. Like and that's in the article. You make these decisions, you take things away. Nobody says, stop, bring that back. Right. It's always just a decision that builds on another one, that builds on another one, builds on another one, until you are no longer exceptional. You're just, oh, okay, you're like everybody else. You're average. That sucks when it happens. I've had that. I've gone through that before, and it's hard to fight against. Really, I mean, what do? You can only fight that with your feet, right? By leaving.
Well, perhaps, but I know. I'll just talk from Chad. You and I sit on a committee that the goal is to not let that happen, right? Not let the employee experience become mediocre.
Right.
And when things do become mediocre, there's a group that call it out and identify it and try to come up with solutions around moving off of that problem. And I won't say that we've, gotten mediocre or anything like that. We've, just things have changed, and the organization has changed quite a bit from when I started to when you started, Chad. Our size, our makeup, our
Yeah. And those are the kind of the excuses that we have to fight against sometimes, right? Because the makeup of the organization changes, right?
Yeah.
And that's I heard this before, right? Oh, it's a different company now. It's a different this, it's a different that. Well, we have more people now. We have this, we have that. All of it is, it goes against okay, that's true, but we're still going to be what got us to this point, right?
Right.
We're not going to stop doing it just because of COVID happened. Okay, there was a pandemic, right? But there were still, we're bigger now. Well, we're this. I haven't heard the COVID thing, but actually the COVID thing did happen at the end of my previous engagement, my previous gig. And that was like one of their lightning rods that they held on. Oh, it's COVID. It's blah, blah, blah. We don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I'll give them credit, right? We didn't back then, but now we do, right? We're back.
And I think it's, it's like when you let reasons become excuses. There's a reason we got here, but we're here. So now we're not going to try to get out of here. Like, what's the next goal? Like we had an up ramp building, and we're going to become this thing, and we're charging ahead. And then you hit this point where, okay, we kind of became that. We are that. And there's a let off.
And we are that. And we have attracted all this talent around that. Right.
Right.
Well, now we're going to start cutting it. Right. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about what happened to me previously. Like, we were able to build something that was truly special. Right.
Special enough to be purchased. Right.
special enough to be purchased, special enough to be, and special enough to attract like really, really great people to our organization, to what we had before. Towards the end of it, that wasn't the case anymore, right? Like, I mean, it just withered and died, and you slowly watch people walk out the door, and that's another artifact of this mediocrity and the inertia behind it. You watch one guy go and, oh, okay, well, you're going to watch another guy right after that, because if it's the right guy, he creates a wake behind him that pulls everybody along out the door. And holy crap, that's what you got to fight against desperately. And I think you're right, Peter. The committees that we set up, the way the stopgaps against that we've done, great, absolutely great.
And it really helps. It helps to have new, fresh people coming into an organization with new ideas, right? And even if they're old ideas that you've already thought of before, well, maybe the time wasn't right to do it then, but now the time could be right. So let's try. A lot of this mediocrity sense that I get is that it's the unwillingness to try, right? It's like, well, we've got it this way, we're going to keep going, or we're going to float along, or, dog paddle and keep our average thing going and not try anything new.
Or just they got tired, right? Like we tried for so long, and now I want to relax, or I want to.
I think if your people are innovating, and you're in that innovation mode, you're in that ramp up where you're pushing, and you've got involvement and momentum, and that's, if you're just trying to do the bare minimum to sustain that, like, you're going to start to lose it. You always have to be pushing and trying. I mean, that's what I like about the experience committee, and the fact that we do that, and the fact that we're never satisfied. There's always this goal of better. So we do keep pushing. And if you don't do that, and you stop listening to the ideas or taking them seriously, or you shut people down enough, and they stop trying to present those ideas.
Chad, you mentioned, people creating a wake as they walk out. Another thing that can happen is that the people that don't walk out are the people that are just fine sitting and not moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, mediocre people attract mediocre people, so that, you can be that and look exceptional if you're around enough of it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's, it just feeds itself so fast. And,
when you were talking about the things that were going away, and probably the challenge was that they couldn't envision implementing it in this bigger company, right? Like, oh, that's a really cool idea for you guys, but we're bigger than that, and so we're not even going to try to bring that cool idea to the rest of us. We're just going to get rid of it from you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it was kind of like, okay, you guys have your culture, we have our culture. Their culture was not great, right? But they tried to whittle down something that was working really well to something that was, I mean, turnover rates at parent company were high, very high. Turnover rates at our thing were non-existent. And so that's the one metric I have for who was doing it right, who wasn't, right? And so, yes, when you start to just whittle away things until you're just, a regular place. Maybe not one of the best companies to work for in the Twin Cities, if that was an award that you gave out to companies, right?
Right.
Is it? Have you guys heard of that one? Is that a thing? I don't know if I've said it right.
I think the Star Tribune may do something like that.
Really? hang on a second, really quick. I'm going to see if solution design.
Just like the number 7 just popped into my head. I don't know why.
Yeah. Top 10.
I think
we've won this 6 years in a row. Is that right?
That's a lot of years.
Is it 6 or 7? Best places to work.
I don't know. I don't remember a time when.
Yeah. It's hard to keep track when you've made the list, and we used to do the business journal list as well, and to be on that list year after year is quite astounding. And it doesn't happen by accident. And I think that's what another thing that we're talking about here is these things they don't just happen. They don't just, we accidentally became a great place to work, right? No, we worked really hard and we listened to people and their concerns as they came up, and we came up with some exciting ideas and pushed forward with them and had a great place to work.
Well, what I notice is if things are starting and they continue to be like new things continue to be started, new communities, new channels, and things are growing and things have momentum and people are involved. The ambition, do more, I think has always been one of the signatures of what I've seen in my coworkers, when I was a consultant, is wanting to do more, wanting to get involved and make your mark and do cool stuff. And we have all these communities, and it's because of that, as people have a drive to add. I want to add something. I want to build something. I want to create something. And given, an organization that gives room to do all that, gets excited that all that's happening and encourages it.
Right.
But if you have a, stagnation, if you become a mediocre, you're only going to retain to that level. I saw it in a past, life in a different profession and all that, where you'd get good people shining bright stars and they wouldn't be around that long. You go into a place like that and you don't want to stay.
Right.
So I think your point on retention, Chad, is right on the money.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be an incubator for somebody else's talent, right? And that's
Yeah.
what happens a lot of the times. Think of kids coming right out of school, right? First gig, they're not going to stay, right? Unless how often do you see somebody, especially in our field, where an IT professional finds Fortune 500 company and starts there as a, junior developer and stays there for 35 years? It is that's a unicorn these days, right? Like,
Yeah.
that barely happens.
I don't think it barely happened in the last 10 years for sure. I mean,
I can think of, in my circle of friends, I can think of 3 people, right? But I've been doing this for more than 25 years now. Three people that I've met out of 25 years have been at the same place. That percent, it's less than 1% of the people I know in IT. I think I'm doing that math right. And so, and they're great guys, but they're
and they may or may not be in the mediocre pool that we're talking about, right?
I'm not going to comment on either side. I don't want them to feel bad or get a big head.
No.
Either way,
but at the same time, some people do look for that. And it used to be the norm, right?
I want to find a place. I want to be comfortable. I want to have to. Yeah, that used to be a goal. And I think for a lot of people, like certain period of my life, I kind of wanted that, right? Where I wanted to be like, man, I've got so many other things happening. I don't want work to be this insane,
Right.
And so I get it. It's not a bad place to be, right? Like they make the same money we do, just comfortable. And I don't want to be. I don't want to be a part of a place where there are a lot of just comfortable people around. I want everybody around me to be pushing a little bit.
Yeah. And consulting is definitely the way to go if you are in that boat, because you're surrounded by people that are constantly learning, constantly keeping up to date on things, constantly sharing stories about places that are, breaking the mediocrity cycle and all of those things. Like people are learning every single day and they're sharing it with everyone else. And it's an amazing environment.
It's contagious. Excitement is contagious and attitudes are contagious. If you get into a stagnant environment, you fight, you try, but at some point it's not going to happen here. What I like about our company is the overachiever. We're not happy with the bare minimum. Like people want to knock it out of the park. They want to do great things. And I think that's part of it is, what do you want to accomplish when what kind of solution do you want to build? What kind of impression do you want to make? I know I'm never happy with our intranet site, and I've been building it and rebuilding it for 13 years, 12 years,
right?
Yeah. I like where we're at now, and what are we doing? We're improving it. Always.
That's an interesting reflection, right? Like an intranet site is one of those pieces of software that should never, ever be static, right? It should always be changing. There should always be something new happening in it. If you get to the point where, oh, we've covered everything in this company, it's all on this site, and that's good for the next 20 years, that's probably a bad plan, right?
Yeah. Well, and one of the other things I've always appreciated, allowing people to kind of set their own level of extra of what they want to do. People have lives come into play, or work-life balance comes into play, and some people don't have the time, don't have the energy. That's fine. Like, no one is looking down on that. No one has a dim view of that. It's like, it's there's an understanding that not everybody's going to be like Tom Cruise, jumping up and down and screaming and leaping over furniture and driving motorcycles off of cliffs.
Yeah, that's the one.
And you don't have to be
that.
And sometimes it's just getting, like, contentment is a good thing.
But if you work with Tom Cruise, you are going to be more tempted to get on that motorcycle every once in a while and maybe take the small ramp and maybe not off the cliff, but
just even riding it might be,
Yeah, like even getting on a motorcycle might be beyond your comfort zone or beyond your place where you're stuck.
Chad, are you ever satisfied with like your smoked meats?
Oh no, I mean that I've perfected that. That can't go anywhere else.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it can't get any better.
You're not even going to try anything different.
His only constraints now are physics.
It's a capacity issue now more than a quality issue.
So you make brisket and nothing but brisket, or ribs, or
brisket, ribs. I'll do brisket. I'll do ribs. I'll do pork shoulder. Lately, I've been smoking prime rib or rib eyes.
Lately,
smoke them for.
Wait, you changed?
No. Because my time commitments for work are rather extreme these days. So I don't necessarily have 24 continuous hours to smoke a brisket anymore.
I hear you.
And so I do have, like, I can throw some rib eyes in.
Do you sear before or after?
After. So I smoke them low for a while, right? And then I like flash sear, like flash, right? Like they go in like 30 seconds aside to get at like a ridiculous temperature to get perfect, to get the crust.
Nice.
Spectacular.
The crust.
Yeah, really good. And then you put like basically half a pound of butter on top of it and let it melt over the crust at the end, and it's amazing. But I seriously don't know how you get at any better than that, right? Like,
that sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
I have to admit.
But yeah, I mean, professionally, I am occasionally grumpy about new things, but that's, I mean,
I think that's human nature, right? Like,
yeah.
I figured this thing out. I spent time. I put time towards this, and now I want to use that for as long as I can.
But for me, it's really, it's even a little different than that. Like, I'll get our co-workers, our other consultants will push each other to be a little bit better. Jen Eman, one of the consultants in our Microsoft practice, and I wish we would just stop calling them Microsoft practice or Java practice or whatever. Just, we're all consultants, right? We're not in the same practice.
Too.
She pushed it.
Well, why are you saying that?
Exactly. Because
you're doing it. You're the one calling it that.
I feel like structurally and organizationally, there's certain predilections towards that. But she has pushed me to like dig in a little bit more to AI. Right? She invited me to speak at the panel at OSN with her, and that was awesome. And that motivated me to get more into it to the point where now I think I'm doing a presentation for all of us.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
What date? When is that? August, right?
Yeah. First 2 weeks of August.
I should really get cracking. Yeah.
You might want to start that. Yeah.
I started like the day before.
Or just have the AI write it for you.
Just wing it.
But like, that's an example. That's a direct example of the fight against mediocrity, right? Like, we have all of, not just these big event, like the big event, but also OSN and these other things that we all participate in and that we all have an opportunity to contribute to. And contributing to something like that pushes you to be not lackadaisical about anything. 100%. Really. Right. So yeah, that's
tough to get up and talk about something without knowing it.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's there's also good habits, good structure, good routines, and that does not mean you're stagnant. There's just some things that, just work. If you have your morning routine figured out, takes away some of the decision-making needs, and that way you can devote that energy to other things. Being strong and stable and, healthy and getting yourself in a good spot allows you, I think, to move beyond that. I don't think it's, everything is necessarily mediocrity just because it's not, you're not focusing on improving every little thing, every little part of your life. It's like, okay, I've got this wired in. I've got a good hammer that works great. I don't need to replacing my awesome hammer every new model that comes out. It's like
the only new hammer in my toolbox right now at home is because somebody, not to be named, lost one of my hammers. So I had to get a replacement. Other than that, the hammers have been the same.
Chad, you're pretty set on like the tools you use. You like your Mac, you like your camera.
Yes. So I'm comfortable in the Apple environment, right? So Mac and my iPod. I love them because I don't have to think about them, right? They're just extensions now. They tools.
Become invisible.
Yeah. And so that's kind of why I've grown in mildly inflexible. I realize at some point I might have to work with a Windows laptop as a consultant. I will be mildly grumpy about it, and I will be 10% less productive probably for a while.
Oh, absolutely.
And if I'm on I think there's a few scenarios where that would be, the case where this is what you're provided and you can make it work. But yeah, you're allowed to be grumpy a little bit.
Yeah.
Just don't express your grumpiness too loud.
Another example of me being pushed by other consultants to be better. Remember last week or 2 weeks ago, I realized there's a lot of chess players at STG. We should actually start a chess club. And I realized that either I'm amazing at chess or they're just really bad. And we can push each other to be better by constantly losing to Chad.
Have you played?
Lost yet? No.
Have you played Dr. Bob yet?
I have not played Dr. Bob. I'm looking forward to it.
Dr. Bob, if you're listening, I want you to kick his butt.
I have played other
But honestly, that is how people improve, right? Nobody gets better at chess by not playing chess.
I think you have to you kind of have to have acceptance of where you're at and say, oh my gosh, I've become this or it's become this. And then the effort, starting that change, trying to build that momentum to turn things around. There's always that phase where you have to prime the pump. There's always that phase where you have to make tough choices and draw a line and say, you know what, this just isn't good enough anymore. And I think once you do that and you start to build momentum, then, the inertia goes the other way.
That's true. I mean, we've talked about the inertia towards mediocrity. There's also an inertia away from mediocrity that can be maintained and helps maintain itself also, right? Like if you start making changes to make things better, other people will see that and want to make changes to make things even better than you made them, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
So there is a push both ways.
Well, here's an example that I'm working through right now. I've lived in a cluttered world of equipment and adapters and like power cords, and I can always make the excuse of, well, I'm the IT guy and I got equipment coming in and out all the time, and it's just how it is. Well, I'm sick of it. And so I've been working to try to make my office a clean, nice, well-organized place. And that front cube, it's like I've got shelves to put together. It's like there's a lot of work to do. And then there's the staying on top of it, but It's happening. And I can see it happening. And I'm more pumped about it. It's not a big chore. It doesn't feel like a chore. It feels good now to be working toward that goal.
You've got the momentum and you're building towards that
Yeah.
clarity. But the starting point wasn't as easy as I'm going to clean up everything and then it will be fine, right?
Right.
I will clean up some things and I have to maintain it. I know I've heard on other podcasts that if you're trying to break that cycle, to start with a small area and keep that area organized, and then eventually add another small area, until you've added the entire space, right? And I think, we're talking about that same thing, and is that sometimes when you recognize that you are in mediocrity, start small, make a small change and maintain that change and then build upon it until finally, eventually everybody gets on board and it turns around, right? It can.
I'm going to have a history of my podcast backgrounds that will show my growth and improvement over time.
I know when the ladder gets put away and the what is that, a treadmill? I think that's when we'll know. Then we'll know.
It's happening.
It's happening.
The ladder is no longer in that room. That's step one. No, it's making those choices, and it's like, this isn't good enough for me. Like this isn't good enough, and I need to do something about it. And I've even enlisted others to help me.
Right.
And they have, and it's been awesome. And also, there's people around me that are highly organized and have beautifully decorated spaces.
And their pencils are all lined up. And
that's not you, Chad. Talk about Maddie next door.
I think all of our CMs decorate their offices exquisitely.
Yes.
And occasionally I will assist some of them and I'll add a few grain belt bottle caps and decorate them further for them. Or an artistic display of empty grain belt 16-ounce cans.
Right.
And you know what I love is hearing how much each and every one of them appreciate when I do that for them. Like the messages I get after they find a bottle cap, maybe in their the pocket of the sweater that they left laying out.
Oh, nice.
It's a nice little, hey, Chad, thank you. I appreciate you thinking of me.
Right.
Thank you for doing that. I love it. Keep doing that every single time. And it's heartwarming, honestly, to hear that.
There's a reason there's a lock on my door.
I actually tried to pick it the other day. I tried the credit card trick, but I have metal credit cards, so that didn't work. It's a bummer.
Parting thoughts as we wind down.
All right, parting thoughts. Chad, you go first.
I don't know. I don't have a great parting thought. I think I put it all out there. I think the hardest thing about this entire discussion is having the conversation when you recognize it, right? And then dealing with the consequences of that conversation. I mean, once you're down a path, having the conversation and changing directions is incredibly difficult. Don't not have it because you're afraid of it. Don't be a coward, right?
Don't stay in mediocrity just because you got there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Be courageous. It's okay to ask for help and to help get that momentum going. I've had a lot of help organizing things, and now it's like the desire to maintain it and keep it moving forward, to honor that help. And that's kind of a community thing where it's like you see that we're all like raising each other up.
I will say this: don't be afraid to get started. Don't be afraid to fall back every once in a while. It takes a while. But once you recognize it, then that's the time to make the effort.
Yeah. And now I think after we talked about this for an hour, we're all going to let go and do some real thinking about stuff. Now we're all required to achieve greatness, the three of us.
Damn,
done.
I'm gonna take a nap.
Done and done.
Or yeah.
No.
All right. Well, I think with that, we can say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.